Hello, Kingdom Kids. We've missed you at church. This virus has kept us at home a long time, but we're doing our best to try to stay connected to you and show you and teach you lots of great things about God and His creation. So here I am again on our farm, and right now I'm at the house. And today I was going to tell you a little bit more about where our food comes from and about the food that we grow for ourselves is usually, well, for a family anyway, a small field would be like our garden. And maybe you have a garden in your family and you like to help with that or to eat the fresh things. And if you do it on a larger scale, that's what the farmers do for the animals, and they have lots of equipment, big tractors and machinery that helps them to plant a large amount. And then that is used to feed lots of people or animals. And so farming, crop farming, is basically just a big garden. And the idea, though, is that we're all dependent on God to make it grow. So even though there's a lot of science involved in gardening and farming, it's still very much a faith in God partnership. And God has told us that we have to work by the sweat of our brow, and we're going to have to put up with weeds and stones and bad weather and all kinds of things because of the sin that Adam and Eve had back in when he first made the first people back in the Garden of Eden. And so we can still grow and see the miracle of things growing in front of us. It's still all God, but we have to work a lot harder for it. Now we have to really constantly battle the weeds and the heat and the weather and the rocks and all those sorts of things in order to get our food. But it's still there, and we still see God in the midst of it. But we have to be dependent on Him for the sunshine, for the warmth, for the rain at the right times, and not too much, or else the plants either flood or dry up or whatever. So it's all very much a partnership with God. So today I'm going to show you around my garden and some of the areas around our place to show you what I enjoy doing in my garden. But first I want to share with you some verses from God's Word in the Bible about farming and gardening and God's blessing us. Chapter 1, verse 11. Then God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds." And it was so. From Isaiah 30:23. He will also send rain for the seed you sow in the ground, and the food that comes from the land will be rich and plentiful. In that day your cattle will graze in broad meadows. Hebrews 6:7. Land that drinks in the rain often, falling on it, and that produces a crop useful to those for whom it is farmed, receives the blessing of God. And another one, Deuteronomy 8:10. When you have eaten and are satisfied, praise the Lord your God for the good land He has given you. That means we need to stop and take time to be thankful for all the food that we have and know that it comes from God and from God's hand, and it's part of His creation. And we need to be thankful for not only our food, but all the people involved in growing it for us and picking it and driving the trucks that take it to the supermarkets and to the grocery stores where you buy it, and for the people who cook it and prepare it, like your mom and your dad. And there's so many people involved in it that that's why we stop and we thank God that He has met our needs and has provided the food that we need for our bodies to grow and stay strong. Coming out to my garden in the morning when the sun is still a little on the cooler side, and when it's normally hot in the summer, it's nice to come out in the morning and hear the birds and see the world waking up and the nice air and just starting my day outside in God's creation. So first I'm going to show you what my garden looked like a few weeks ago. I think it was about the middle of July. And then I'll show you some pictures of what it looks like a month or so later. And you'll see some differences, and you'll see how things have matured and changed and grown and are ready to eat. My garden this morning, we have the yellow squash, and you can see it. It has a blossom. You have to have the blossom is where the fruit, the squash is called the fruit, it starts to grow. And the bees have to come. I don't know if you can see any of the bees and the bugs flying around here, but here, there's a bee inside this flower right here. It's pollinating the flower, and the bee has to do its job, pollinating it. Kind of moves, oh, there's two of them in there. Moves different parts of the plant from one place to another, and that makes the plant make fruit or squash that starts to grow. So there's another yellow squash. Over here we have zucchini, the green squash down in there. Lots of blossoms. The first year I've been having the zucchini grow without dying as soon as the plant gets bigger. Now this year the plants look nice and healthy. I'm not really sure why. Some years are just like that. This is soybeans basically, but we know it as edamame. When you go to the Chinese buffet, maybe you get some of the green pods with the bright green beans inside. They'll start making their pods and growing the beans pretty soon. The plants look pretty good. Here we have carrots with all their very ferny, wiggly tops. If we had bunny rabbits, they would love to be eating all this. Yum, yum. In fact, let's see what we can find down here. If we pull one up, you'll see that they're just not very big yet, but they're growing long and straight. And actually, they're yummy just like that. For me or a rabbit. I don't have any rabbits now. I used to have about 40 something when I was a kid. But I have Swiss chard here in the front. It's just been cut off and been given a haircut, and I shared it with about a bushel of it with somebody the other day. So it's growing back. Here we have yellow beans and green beans that are starting to grow with some very crowded beets here in the middle. Behind that we have delicado squash. This great big plant here. And you can see the blossoms down inside there. So it's going to do the same thing. It has to have the blossom and the bees in order to make the squash fruit grow. And I thought I would show you, oh, I'm not seeing it. I was going to show you some of the bug eggs that were actually on the leaf. Here we have tomatoes. They're starting to make. Nothing red yet, but they're growing. They're nice green tomatoes. It's full in here. I use these cages to help plants grow straight up instead of all over the ground and take up quite so much space. Onions. I squeezed in some onions growing around the outside of my tomato plants, but I've got this whole raised bed is full of tomatoes, so looks like they're going to be abundant this year. Over here we have some raspberries that are just Well, let me go to the other side. Nice raspberries. And again, it took lots of bees to make the fruit grow on the blossoms. And this is one variety. The nice big red ones. They have a different flavor and different size and shape than this kind here. And my row is basically, well, it's a little spotty in here, but this has the green berries that aren't ripe yet. So this variety is just starting to show some berries turning red, but not quite as ready as this variety is. And here on the end, as long as I'm here, there's a small blueberry bush. It's just starting to, well, I already ate a bunch of the blueberries actually, but it didn't make very many. And actually, if I turn around behind me, there's a few raspberries left of another variety. I basically tried to cut these out, and a few of them came back. I decided I didn't care for that variety very much, so I was going to get rid of them and put something else in this space. On this trellis, I have some baby grape tomatoes. They'll be small, the size of a grape, and they'll turn red soon. They're going to climb up that trellis. And I use all sorts of things for trellises for plants to climb up. Here's some old bed springs, for instance. Nothing growing here this year. I didn't get anything planted there, but they work pretty good for peas or the grapevines or mouse melons or anything like that to climb up. And I walk down this row. I use cardboard on the ground between my rows because it helps to keep the weeds down, and I haven't been very good about keeping the weeds out of the path this year. Here we have some winter squash that'll grow up this big trellis. Maybe. Still growing. I have cucumbers going on in here, and marigolds. No cucumbers to eat yet. They're still growing. But I use the marigolds because they have a smell that some of the cucumber beetles and bugs don't like. So I'm trying to get some cucumbers this year without the bugs eating them all up. You have to always fight all these critters and weeds. So I'm hoping this will help some. We have eggplant here on the end. I have this pretty purple blossom. Again, it'll take bees to do their work in order to make the eggplant grow. And the other day I saw baby eggplants starting. There you go. You can see they're starting down here to grow, the purple eggplant. And on this side, there's more of the cucumbers. I'm hoping they're going to make it. And as long as I'm here, outside the pasture for the cows, they must be on the other side this morning, or inside. Sometimes they grow things in, this is usually a potato garden, in the old tractor tire. The black rubber absorbs the heat from the sun's rays and makes it a little warmer in there. I put in a bunch of dried grass and old hay. And this year the potatoes, I didn't grow them in there. I moved it, but sometimes we have lots of potatoes. But right next to it is the potato bed, which is actually made from an old Bethel Grove church pew down here. This wood is one of the old church pews from Bethel Grove. And I made it into a little bit of a bed to hold the dirt and the hay to grow some potatoes in. And they also have blossoms, but it looks like they're about gone now. I was going to show you a potato blossom, which means when you see the little purple or whatever blossoms on top, it means that they're starting to grow potatoes down in the ground. And I put in a few onions on the front of this. When they were little, they didn't take up much space, but now they're kind of taking over. So I'm using those onions first. Oh, this is actually a big... No, it's not a weed. So I'll show you some potatoes later after they grow a little more. One thing about raspberries, once you get them started, they start taking over the place. All these new shoots will be new berries this fall, and they just start coming up all over the place. They'll come up in my garden. I have to keep pulling them out. They'll take over my path all the way out. I try to keep them contained in this trellis area so that I can mow over here and not hit the electric fence, which is what keeps the cows in. This has electricity in it so that they get a little bit of a zap if they try to get out of their pasture. They're trained, they don't do it more than once or twice. So all of these shoots down here will start coming out into the lawn, the grass, taking over the world if I don't keep them mowed or cut back. So you kind of have to consider them weeds if they're not growing where you want them to. So it takes some maintenance to keep things in good order. Asparagus bed. Right now the asparagus has gone past its prime for this year, and I let it go to seed, which is why it's growing all these tall, wiggly, ferny tops, and it's starting to make some mature, some berries or whatever on the top, and the roots are what we care about. The roots are getting energy from the tops, collecting all the sunshine and the nutrients and going down to the roots and making the roots stronger, so that next year there'll be more asparagus growing up. You can see the stems look like asparagus, but they're all very tough and woody right now. But we've got little baby shoots starting to come up, and hopefully they'll get stronger and better by next year. Maybe I'll show you, like, there's still some little sprouts coming up, so I really could still cut some of the small ones off and eat them if I wanted to, but I've pretty much let this go for this year. Then about Thanksgiving time, I'll cut all the tops off, and it'll go through the winter, and then like that, and then in the spring it'll be one of the very first things that come up in the ground that you can eat fresh in the new year is asparagus. It lives down in the cold ground and it starts coming up as soon as the days start getting warmer. So that's always a treat because it tastes good having something green and fresh. You can grow things in all sorts of containers. And so you can have pots on your porch or your deck. This is it's called Mr. Stacky. And it's got soil in each little pod that stack on top of each other in layers. And I've been using this one mostly for herbs. So I have chives and oregano and basil and mint and oregano and rosemary and sage and parsley. I haven't necessarily been taking great care of it, but here we have some chocolate mint, some lemon thyme. I have some marjoram and stuff somewhere. Hyssop, that says. This is a spearmint. This kind of grows wild. It'll take over the whole bed if I'm not careful, so I put it in a pot so that its roots don't go over and take over all of the other flower areas. Oh, this on top is lemongrass and some more chives and just some flowers I dug up and put in there. This isn't weeded, but gives you an idea of you can grow things to eat or things just to be pretty. And so here I've put in sidewalk on the porch that we built a few years ago. Don't have the garden finished over here on this side. It'll probably be a rock garden. So you can even have a rock garden. You don't have to have things that really are alive and need to be watered. And then finally got the steps sort of built. Not still quite finished, no railing yet. But we have things in pots that can also be used to keep your place happy. Oh, and as long as I'm here, I will show you the serviceberry tree, which has grown from a tiny little stalk that I started with in just a few years. I'm hoping it won't go too much bigger because I didn't want it to cover my windows. But right behind the tree is my office where I work at my desk, so I can watch all the birds and things that come to the tree, like that one, who I just scared away. But lately I've had little chipmunks that are living in the ground down here, making holes and coming up and eating the berries. This Juneberry tree or serviceberry tree. They like it. They don't have as much flavor as a blueberry. They look a lot like a blueberry. Not quite as flavorful, but people can eat them too. But the animals, the birds really like them. Look who I've caught snitching my berries outside my window. The nerve of that little striped rat. Hey, you're wasting them. Don't drop them on the ground. Those are my berries. Arrgh. Not the best angle there, Chippy. Mr. Stacky, which sometimes I've put strawberries in. I have a combination of flowers this year and pepper plants, just because I forgot to make room for peppers when I was putting them in the regular garden. I don't know how well they'll do here, all these big ones on the bottom, but it's starting to make little peppers. But I don't think they're going to be as great as they would if they were in the ground with good deep roots. But it's still pretty to do that. Sometimes I put strawberries, flowers. You can put most anything in it. So this is on my old clothesline base. And as long as I'm over here by the pond, here is the strawberry bed with some blueberries on this baby blueberry plant, which also took bees to make berries. And they are delicious, I'm sure. And if I don't get them quickly, the chipmunks will, or the birds will. So, whoops, here's a big weed. I'm going to get the weeds out because they steal the food and water from the plants, the strawberry plants that I want to be healthy and grow. So this is just some rings, just so it's easy to mow around. And I didn't grow a lot of strawberries this year, but some, enough to enjoy. And when they come from a homegrown patch, they're so much tastier than from the store. They're delicious. And over here we have rhubarb, which is the other first thing of the year after the snow melts that we can start eating fresh. Make rhubarb pie. Come up closer on this just to give you an idea. Inside of the plant, you cut off the leaves are actually poisonous, so you have to pull the stalk up from the root, and you cut off the leaf about an inch up, or break it, and you chop this up and you make delicious rhubarb pie, or strawberry rhubarb pie, or strawberry raspberry pie, or raspberry rhubarb pie. Or this myrtle came out of the woods in Newfield where my grandmother and great-grandparents used to live, and I wanted to have a little piece of that heritage at my place, so I brought over just a few little diggings, and it's taken over thick all around my bushes. So that makes me happy.